Oh, was it? I'm sorry. Yeah. And I mean, is it yours?
No. Finders keepers. Good evening.
Oh, you're gonna try to take mine?
You knew it.
For it.
Yeah.
I was trying to say finders keepers.
There's a, should be a link on
I don't want this. Oh, and oh, boy, if you got that wrong.
It was very busy. My daughter flew home, and then my son came over, and my dad flew. Who did you have for Florida? So we had dinners like 3 nights, actually 4 nights in a row.
Cannibal conversations about
So I feel like I was gonna explode.
who you had for dinner. Never mind. Yeah, dark humor.
Yeah, so we had 2, then we had 4, and then we had 4, and then 2. So it was busy.
Black and blue.
Monday morning at 5.
Oh, and it was good.
but instead of going down, pipes down sleep.
Oh, worse.
Wait.
Well, just, I've been to Slayton many times. I've been to the Slayton.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order, excuse me. Will the clerk please note those in attendance?
All will be noted.
And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Look at the minutes that I'm wearing.
Okay, I trust everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from the November 14th council meeting. If so, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
A motion, do I have a second? Motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. 1 abstention.
Sorry.
2 abstentions. All right. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. I'm told that we've been asked to pull item 4A, resolution approving updated polling places for the 2024 presidential primary election. So we'll move that under to 8B. And other than that, are there any other corrections, amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 4, consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. Item 5, visitors and presentations. The White Bear Lake Area Schools North Campus roadway improvements update. Mr. Copy.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we have representatives of the school district and their consulting team here tonight to give an update on some of the roadway improvements that were required under the North Campus project. They'll run through where we're at today. Obviously, it started back, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So we have a lot of new council members and whatnot that may not have been in on the initial phases of this. So we're getting kind of towards the end of it, and we thought it would be appropriate to bring them in to have an update so that council is prepared and can answer any questions before we finalize plans and ask for some different approvals early in 2024. So I'm not sure who is going to start. I think Paul Aplikowski from Wold Architects will start the presentation and give you a little bit of background. And then at the end, they'll be available for any questions that council has.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Paul Aplikowski with Wold Architects and Engineers. We are kind of leading the whole project, all of the projects in the district for the referendum. And these are some of the trailing projects. They're getting towards the end. And the goal is to have them, the roads operational and redone in time for the the formal opening of the full high school building next year. I did want to kind of just tell a little bit of a history of the projects. I know that some of the council wasn't on the seat when we started all this, but our conversations really started in the summer of 2019 with the city. As the district was preparing to go out to referendum for these projects, we did begin conversations about the impact of the high school within the improvements to the high school within the city, and that did identify that there was probably going to be some need to improve roads. In November of 2019 is when the referendum passed and we began formal design in earnest. That also involved doing some traffic studies. There's been a couple different traffic studies requested by the city, performed by the school district that have informed the work that we're presenting tonight. With that, there were some preliminary designs. At that point, we did have a neighborhood meeting, particularly about 8th Street, to talk about some of the improvements that we'll show you tonight there, and got input during that event. And then continued on with the design of the high school and the roads. In 2021, we came to the city and got approval for the conditional use permit for the high school project, and that did include conditions that would require the improvement of the roads, so we're just here to fulfill that obligation. During that time, we've had SEH as our consultant to get through all these road improvements and their expertise. They have worked with the city, the county, MnDOT, the railroad, and the various utilities to work on all these improvements. And we are in the sort of last stages, we believe, of approvals from those groups. We anticipate shortly into the new year, we'll get sort of our final approvals from those groups too, and be back here with you to talk about formal approval of the final designs. As Paul mentioned, this is kind of a preliminary tonight, so we're not set in stone. We do have one more neighborhood meeting planned for December 7th at 7 p.m. to get some more input before we finish our designs. And again, with that information and hopefully some final approvals from the other agencies, we'll be able to come back and talk about actually moving forward with these projects. So that's kind of the history. If there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer questions about how we got here. Otherwise, we'll have Josh come up and talk a little bit about the actual proposed improvements.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening. I'm Josh Brad with SEH. Our firm has been engaged by Wold and the school district to focus on the design of the roadway improvements themselves, especially as it relates to the improvements within the city right of way and then the state and county right of way as well. And so that's what we'd like to present tonight, is kind of an update on, as Paul said, all of the improvements we're going to talk through tonight come as a result of the years of previous discussions with the city and the other agencies, the requirements that were part of the conditional use permit, and the recommendations of the various traffic studies that were done. And so, starting along Division Avenue, we plan and are proposing to add turn lanes along Division Avenue and widen Division Avenue to the west to create those turn lanes. So that'll widen it in towards the school property side. There isn't any plans to widen or really impact the residents that are on the west side, the residents that are on the east side, with the exception of some ongoing coordination with the Art Center itself and some potential connections between the two campuses there. But as far as the other homeowners and residents, we don't anticipate any impacts to their property or into the yards in front of their house. So with those turn lanes and the widening, the plan would be to have a southbound right turn lane into the northern entrance of the school, and then northbound left turn lanes into both of the school entrances. This comes from the traffic study and the kind of anticipation that for southbound traffic, that the majority of users accessing the school from the north will be making that first turn either as a parent into the drop-off area or student into Go Park, whereas the anticipation is that for traffic coming from the south, as they make that left turn into the site, then the majority of students are going to make the first left turn into the student parking area, whereas parents will continue up to the second left turn into the parent drop-off area, and hence kind of the discrepancy with only having the one southbound turn lane compared to the two northbound. And then other than that, the other improvement along Division Avenue is the median separating those two left turn lanes to potentially provide a crossing for that potential connection between the school campus and the Center for the Art campus, and then as well to provide some traffic calming and other safety for those left turn lanes and for the traffic traveling through along Division. And then moving south along 8th Street, and I do apologize that this is oriented with north to the right and not up. But along 8th Street, as a result of the traffic study and the increase in traffic along here, was determined that given the width of the road and with parking allowed on both sides, that there isn't enough room if there's cars parked on both sides to allow traffic through on both sides, as I'm sure you may be aware. And so in discussions with the, from the first open house and with city staff and previous engagement, the proposal here would be to widen 8th Street to the north, moving that north curb line approximately 2 to 3 feet north to create a wider road section that would then allow for through lanes in both directions and then a parking lane on the south side of the road. The plan would then be to install no parking signs and prohibit parking on the north side of the road. In addition to that widening to the north on the south side behind the existing curb would be a proposed sidewalk running from Bloom all the way out to US 61 to connect the school site and other pedestrians in that area out into the downtown area and across 61, where they'll be able to cross at the proposed signal that comes from the result of the recommendations of the traffic study and the ICE reports that were prepared and approved. And then as again, one of the major requirements of the school's conditional use permit is that that traffic signal be in place prior to the full opening next fall. With that traffic signal, the additional improvements at that intersection do include, in coordination with the railroad, they'll be installing a new crossing there with improved crossing panels and then adding in the overhead railroad signals and gate arms as well. And then with 8th Street, the proposal would be to widen 8th Street at that crossing as well to provide a separated right turn lane and then through left lane for the eastbound traffic to separate those turning movements into their own lanes as they cross the railroad and then approach the intersection. In coordination with MnDOT and being out in their right away in that portion of the intersection per their requirements, we'll be doing ADA improvements in all 4 corners of the 8th Street intersection. And then as well as we head south of that intersection, we're proposing extending the median and reconstructing the median to the south between 7th and 8th Street to extend the northbound left turn lane to provide additional storage capacity in that northbound left turn lane, which would then eliminate the southbound left turn lane at 7th Street and prohibit those left turns, but does then allow the opportunity to create a pedestrian refuge in the median at 7th Street to provide additional safety for pedestrians crossing at that intersection. And then the last thing to mention along 8th Street as well as a recommendation out of the traffic study would be to convert the intersection at 8th and Division, which currently has stop signs only on 8th Street, to an all-way stop with stop signs on all 4 corners. And so to give an update, as Paul said, kind of how we've gotten to here and then, kind of what our plans or proposal is. And then to give an update on kind of the current status of the project, we're in the process of developing 2 plan sets to cover the improvements that I just discussed. Those 2 plan sets will be split between one which will show all of the work on US 61 and the railroad crossing and the Long Avenue intersection, which impacts not only the city property and right-of-way, but also MnDOT and county right-of-way and railroad right-of-way. And that plan set and that work will require a cooperative agreement to be signed and approved by MnDOT, the city, and the school district to cover the agreement on who's on the school paying for that improvement up front, and then the ongoing maintenance agreement between the city and the state for the ongoing maintenance of the signal. And then the second plan set would show the remainder of the improvements, which only impact city right-of-way along 8th Street and Division Avenue, where there aren't any other agency involvement. So both of these plans were recently submitted to the city staff as well as the county and the state and the railroad for their review at what we're calling about a 95% level. So they're not finalized yet, but we are fairly far along in the process, and we do have a lot of the details fleshed out at this point. So those reviews are ongoing. And then with the result of the comments we get back from that, as well as any feedback that we receive tonight and anything that comes out of the open house next week that Paul mentioned, we then do plan to finalize those plans and make any changes that result from any comments or feedback we get, and then plan to resubmit those for agency approvals by the end of the year. at which point MnDOT will be able to write the cooperative agreement, and then we plan to be back early next year, as Paul said, seeking approval of these two plan sets, then asking for the city to sign the cooperative agreement. Our plan from there would be then to go to bidding in the spring and construct these improvements this summer after school's out, and then be done in August before the new school year would start, so that everything is done and buttoned up in time for the full opening for grades 9 through 12 at the school site in 2024. At this point, I'll open it up if anyone has any questions, either for me on the improvements or for Paul or the school on schedule or other items. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Council, do we have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, will we have an opportunity to look at these plans to see the actual changes rather than we're just going to move this road half a foot and not park it? I mean, it's just hard for me to envision. Or no?
Mayor, members of the council, we can definitely make plans available to council or whoever wants to take a look at them. Staff is currently reviewing them, so if you'd like to sit down with staff at any time, we can definitely do that to bring you up to speed on where this has all gone since 2019 when it really started. So I'd be happy to do that with any council or that want to do that.
I heard you say the left turn lane from 61 on 7th is going to be closed off southbound. Are there any other turns that will be changed, taken away? I mean, obviously widening is not a thing, but it sounded like you said you're going to take the left-hand turn lane away on that street.
Correct. So the southbound left turn lane on US 61 would be eliminated, and left turns would no longer be permitted at that intersection. There aren't any other locations in the project where we'd be prohibiting or removing the ability to make a turn. It would be just that one location. And with the network, and especially with the signal improvement at 8th Street, the traffic study showed that there are other options for drivers to get to their destination into that area, especially with the improvement of the signal at 8th Street, allowing that turn to be safer than it is today.
Yeah.
There are, in terms of the neighborhood, people use that in order to get to the gas station.
Mayor, members of the council, just one note on the traffic study from to funnel the traffic into the North Campus, to lengthen that northbound left turn onto 8th Street. In order to make that function and not direct people down 7th Street and create confusion in the neighborhood. That's what was needed to be done in order to make that function, or the signal function and the appropriate traffic route into the North Campus.
If I may add, I will email all these out. They're hard to read, so I'll email those out to the city council. But I think that median is also helping pedestrian crossing as well. So it's adding another safe space for people to stand.
Yeah, and to go on that, that is one of the things, even with the downtown study, crossing of Highway 61 is quite important to the general public, so that it does add that additional opportunity to allow safer crossing at 7th Street as well.
Councilmember Walsh.
Well, just to follow up Councilmember Hughes' question, this is an update. We're not done.
Correct.
There's some decisions that will come to council eventually. Some of these agreements, the 8th Street issues, we're gonna have to vote on those, right? Am I not correct in that? We'll have a chance to review this when it's final. We'll have to approve agreements, won't we?
Mayor, members of the council, as Josh had brought up, this is nearing the end of that design, that coordination with MnDOT and the other agencies. Now would be the time to kind of weigh any opinions or concerns so that things can be
Well, I don't know that I have any concerns. I'm just
but-
looking at this as a process question. If we're going to widen 8th Street, wouldn't that be something we would normally approve as a city?
Correct. So staff has been working with them. Again, we're talking a couple feet in order to allow a full one lane in each direction, a parking lane at a sidewalk. So those plans will be brought back to council kind of in that January, February timeframe for council to ultimately vote on it.
Yeah, okay, that's all I'm saying. I think we'll have a chance to see these, and I don't see any issues. And I really appreciate the update. It's a lot. You guys are doing a lot, which is
Well, just to
which
clarify,
is great.
our decision-making authority is with regard to that street, but we don't really have much to say about what the state of Minnesota decides to do with Highway 61. Am I correct in that?
Mayor, members of the council, ultimately, they are how can I put it, they're not driving the improvements, so they are looking at it from an overall, does it fit with their design standards? Not necessarily, again, they're not driving it, they're not saying, hey, City of White Bear Lake, we want a signal here. It is the school district project that we council ultimately approved back 4 or 5 years ago that is driving that need for that signal. MnDOT is just making sure that it meets all of their requirements. The railroad is reviewing it to make sure that the crossing meets all of their requirements. Likewise, the intersection at Long Avenue, that it meets all of the county requirements. So it's not really that any of the agencies are driving it. They're just making sure that it meets their requirements.
Thank you.
I just want to add, so if there are significant concerns, now would be the time. So the various agencies, their engineering staff can go back and analyze things. So now would be that time. You will approve the agreements, but now would be the time for engineering.
Councilmember Edberg.
So just one more clarity on that. Design issues we deal with now. The who pays, how do we deal with repairs in the future, how do we work together as multiple jurisdictions? That's the January, February conversation. Yeah. Am I capturing that correctly?
That's correct.
So it's like, I wouldn't wait until January or February to have conversation or input on how wide 8th Street or blah, 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 whatever that happens to be. That's what I'm getting out of the conversation. So I am curious, so Bloom Division 8th, 7th, off of 61, I don't have strong feelings one way or the other on those. The construction on 61, how long will that last? What's the impact on traffic through 61? For anybody who's been driving that lately, it's not a onesie, twosie set of vehicles going down the road. How do we deal with traffic during construction, and how much work is going to be required?
Certainly. So, within 61 itself, as I said, the main improvements that are within 61 that are going to impact traffic are while we're building that median itself. While we do that, we will need to close a lane in each direction on 61. And that has been discussed with MnDOT and their staff. They share, obviously, your same concerns about the level of traffic. In discussions with them and with the designers, with our team and with engineers with MnDOT as well, we spent some time brainstorming possibilities of ways to avoid that. Unfortunately, since 61, especially southbound, doesn't have any shoulder, there isn't enough width to provide the required safety protection from the work zone to the traveling vehicle and maintain 2 lanes of traffic. So our plan with regards to that is to include requirements and provisions for the contractor to work as quickly as is reasonable, but make sure, obviously, our goal is certainly we don't want to be out there removing that pavement and closing the lane day one and then not paving it back until the last day we're there. So our plan would be to have provisions to push the contractor to a reasonable and feasible but not excessive period of time spent on that phase to keep the long-term impact to that as short as possible. But certainly there will be probably a 2 to 3 week period where while that median is being constructed, where a lane will need to be closed in each direction on 61.
So we clearly have had other shutdowns on Highway 61 in the not too distant past, so we probably can survive 2 or 3 weeks. Mr. Cowpy, this one might be for you. As we improve the left-hand turn to going to the east toward the lake, does any of these improvements affect our street plans, our requirements for additional upgrades, changing anything that, especially that might cost us money on the east side of 61 that's driven by or related to the stuff going on west of 61?
Mayor, members of the council, nothing that affects any of our future plans that we could foresee. Just kind of circling back a little bit from a cost standpoint, as Josh and Paul had mentioned, the school district, the required improvement, so they are funding everything 100% up front to construct the improvements that were described tonight. We will have ongoing maintenance. Obviously, you know, we're accepting a sidewalk. We'll have to maintain that long-term, things like that. We will also enter into that, be required to enter into a cooperative agreement with MnDOT for the signal. Like any other signal that we have, you know, whether it be at 7th, 4th, 2nd, other locations where we have any of the legs of that intersection. In this case, we would be responsible for roughly 50% of the cost of future maintenance and operations replacement. You know, years down the road, we would have some ongoing costs with the future signal, but up front, the school district is fronting all of those costs.
And is there any, so Councilmember Hughes referenced the 7th Street connection to the gas station, other commercial interests on the east side. Is there any other impacts that we should be aware of on the east side affecting access or egress for businesses?
No other access changes or impacts to either the east side or the west side.
Okay, thank you.
1 second, Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Hughes, did you have a follow-up question?
Well, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're talking about the design at this point, I guess I'd have to say I get why we're getting rid of that left-hand turn lane there on 7th. That doesn't mean I'm not concerned about it. I mean, people do take that left in order to get to the gas station. So if they turn on 8th, that means they're driving into the neighborhood in order to drive around several blocks. And these are just neighborhood streets to get to that gas station. Or they're going on into 5th, which allows, 2 cars in that left-hand turn lane, or then into 4th where you're driving into the city. Or, frankly, we're just hurting the gas station. I just think it's something to note. Also, if you're driving and you take that 8th, or you take the left there at 8th, now you are driving right into the neighborhood. There's no lines. This is just neighborhood streets. Whereas 7th is a, that's a double-lane, wide road, sidewalks on both sides. Not made for carrying more traffic, but designed for more traffic to get in and out of the neighborhood. And I just think that needs to be, or that should be considered in terms of how those residents are going to deal now with the impact of what may be increased traffic, or it may not. For people who are, again, looking to get to downtown, and they used to take that 7th, which would go right by, it goes right into it, right? You take that left, you hit the gas station, and then you're right there into downtown. And this is a couple of blocks, or it's a block away through the neighborhood. So,
Mayor, members of the council, as the school district's team had mentioned, the different traffic studies are done. Those traffic studies try to, the best they can, anticipate where people will go. We never know, exactly where every car will go. The anticipation is that most people will actually bypass that A Street, at least from a southbound left, typically, and Josh can correct me if I'm wrong, or remember incorrectly, but most people will typically go past it and enter further down into downtown versus using 8th as a bypass. Will a certain amount of people ultimately figure it out and have it their little shortcut? Absolutely. Just like anything. even on the west side of 61 with the school district traffic, to try to anticipate where every student is going to, every student's going to figure out his little way to get in. It's, this street's a little busy. The time I come into school, I'm going to take the next street down. I'm going to, those things kind of get absorbed into the system. And typically, if there are issues, people figure out ways around them, and they don't end up to be major impacts to any of the areas. But yeah, definitely there will be a slight change in traffic patterns. I don't know if you want to comment any further, Josh, or?
No, I'll kind of echo, as you said, that including, going into the school, it doesn't, we can't, predict where every single, vehicle go, but when you look in the aggregate of, the trends of, the average vehicle, and, when you talk about there being 10 or 100 or, X number of vehicles making this movement per day and how they distribute, you can't necessarily look at any individual one and say, oh, well, Sam's going to do this, but when you look at the aggregate, we can, relatively well predict that, a certain percent of them are going to go this way and a certain percent of them are going to go this way, and, what changes we make will, to the road network can influence that. And then obviously, as Paul said, everyone will kind of find their own way too as time moves on. And part of that too is, some of the existing traffic may find, people that are currently turning in one place may find that with the improvements on 8th Street's a better option for them. And so some of that maybe displaced traffic, is replacing traffic that is itself displacing itself onto the improved road. So it all kind of acts as a network, together. And like I said, certainly, it's a change, but the result of the traffic study is that, we don't anticipate it creating a major, gridlock issue or access issue, within the greater neighborhood or the downtown area. Paul, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just did want to clarify that the point of the improvements on 8th are, in fact, to get it up to the capacity of 7th. So it will be a 2-lane road both ways with 4 lanes.
So just to clarify, did the traffic study suggest that folks that are heading southbound that want to enter around 7th are more likely to go up to 5th rather than 8th? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's, Paul, I think what you're indicating. I don't remember offhand the exact distribution of where those vehicles would go. We spread certainly some of them. We would expect to, continue past, if they're currently turning on 7th and then continuing south within downtown, that they might continue down to 5th, whereas others may turn, early at 8th, and others may find, other roads that were not, they're not obvious within the small, segment of the network that we see on screen, as far as other options or roads as well.
Okay. Well, offline, I'd be curious just for a more definitive answer on that, because to Council Member Hughes' point, there's a big difference between a lot more traffic on 8th versus a lot more traffic on 5th, which is right by Ace and CVS. It's downtown. It's more of a commercial area, so we can talk offline, but I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about that. Councilmember Jones, did you have something?
Just a reminder, I don't want to see the left turn go away. I'd love to be seeing it in there. But at the end of the day, the improvement at 8th and what it does for the entire area, I think we're benefiting greatly at zero cost. The downtown is benefiting. I mean, don't forget that the east border of Cook that's the east border of downtown, and that comes right up. That connects to the new McNeely Music Center, connects to Rudy's Red Eye. It does give a really good connection east side of this. So we're certainly, I think, benefiting greatly over losing a left turn lane in my mind. But that's about it. Thank goodness we didn't have 12 buses an hour adding to this. That's a cheap shot that I get to take.
You want to go there? We'll go there.
Second that.
If I could just add to some of Councilmember Jones's comments. It also helps to connect the Arts District with the new McNeely Music Center, and as he said, Rudy's and Wiper Country Inn, but it also connects people to a city-owned parking lot, which is just on 8th Street versus 7th. You can't see it on that screen, but 7th is already wonky with a couple of medians in there, so adding more traffic at 7th, I don't disagree about the left turn lane. I use it too, but it does add a little bit more confusion with the existing medians at 7th. So, but just wanted to say that we do have an existing city-owned parking lot, and this will definitely improve not only district traffic, but also traffic for the Arts District.
Final thoughts or comments on this? Thank you very much for the update. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. All right, item 6A, first reading of an ordinance establishing the 2024 fee schedule. Ms. Crawford, are you taking this?
I am. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So tonight we will have a first reading and a public hearing for the fee schedule. So city staff reviews the fee schedule every single year and makes proposed adjustments as needed. The fee schedule is then presented to the city council for approval at the end of each year. And adjustments are determined by each department, and they're determined by the amount of staff time and materials necessary to provide services. In addition, utility fees are determined again by personnel costs, capital, and operating costs needed to provide those utility services. So I will briefly go over what I would say maybe are the more major suggested improvements or adjustments to the fee schedule before you have your public hearing, if that's okay. Okay, so when we look at business licenses, which is on page 1 of the fee schedule, most of our alcohol-related business license fees were last amended about 20 years ago. Comparing with similar and other metropolitan cities, Wiper Lake is behind in almost all of our business license categories. The purpose of the adjustments that is to keep up with the market and increasing staff costs and time to administer these licenses, the applications, as well as to conduct compliance checks. To ensure business owners don't feel the burden of the adjustments, as this was shared at a work session, we're going to ease into that over time. But staff acknowledges that we can't just kind of bump up to where we really need to cover our costs. Again, we're not making money; we're covering costs. But so we'll take a gradual approach to that, or that's what I'm proposing. Ambulance rates, we're recommending a 3% rate increase to support operations and capital expenditures. When we look at the sports center, the 24 fee schedule includes annual skate show tickets, skate competition, birthday parties, and pro shop items. Those fees were not previously listed in the fee schedule. They're not new. We have been charging them, but they've not been in the fee schedule. So they appear new in the fee schedule, but they're in fact not changing in the dollar amount. For the marina, we are recommending a 3% increase to the resident rate as well as a non-resident rate for slips for next year. That's on page 5. When we talk about sewer utility fees, the most significant expenditure in the sewer budget is Met Council's wastewater service fee. And that service fee shows a rate increase of about $92,000 for 2024. So to account for that, we do recommend a 1% rate increase for our sewer services. When we look at water rates and infrastructure fees, the fee schedule recommends an increase to both the water consumption rate and the infrastructure fee to ensure that the fund does not operate in a deficit. The commercial water meter fee increases by 1% to ensure collections will cover future replacement meter replacement costs. And surface water management fee. The 2024 fee schedule recommends a residential quarterly fee increase to $11. Commercial and multifamily housing unit quarterly fees increase to $10. Commercial entities with an actual residential equivalent unit, or REU, of 1 to 7 will pay the $10 rate multiplied by their actual REU each quarter. And commercial entities with an actual REU of greater than 7 will pay the $10 rate multiplied by 7. Again, that eases into the fees that would be associated with commercial entities REU. If you have larger space, a larger parcel, have more impervious surface on that space, you will be paying more to account for the stormwater that is running off of your site and not collected on site by pervious surface. When we look at refuse and recycling, the 24 fee schedule recommends a rate that incorporates the 2024 vendor per unit collection and hauling contract fee, and a 17% increase to the tipping fee portion to cover the expenditure increase from the recycling center. So again, those costs are not borne by the city. They're borne by our contract as well as the recycling center. So those cover the major fee increases. I can discuss any of the fees that are listed here if you have any questions, but we do recommend, or you will hold a public hearing tonight and conduct the first reading of the 24 fee schedule. We will have a second reading, the final reading of this ordinance on December 12th prior to adopting the ordinance, and then the fee schedule would go into effect January 1, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. At this time, I will open it up to a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak to this issue. I will note that no one is on the sign-up sheet. Having said that, if you want to speak, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. There was only one thing that really jumped out at me, and that was the fee increase from $100 to $500 for the on and off sale malt liquor application and background. So my knee-jerk reaction is that's insane, that's crazy, that's 5 times the amount. However, upon looking at it a little further, if it hasn't been raised since January of 2004, I look at what was the salary of a police officer back in 2004 versus what it is now. What was the cost of a squad car? Same with other staff that helps administer what that application is. So while I still am concerned because that is a huge increase, I think the city manager makes a pretty compelling argument that yes, costs have gone up. Whether or not it needs to go to 500, I'm going to assume that the city manager has looked at what other communities are doing and has taken somewhat of an appraisal of what our actual costs are, and not treat it as a profit center by any means, but simply to reimburse us for what the actual cost is to administer that. So,
Mayor, I'd like to address that.
Sure.
That $500 is consistent with the other background checks that we do already perform for other, for example, adult establishment application and background, that is $500. That was from 2017. There are others in here, our edible cannabinoid products application and background. So $500 is consistent with what we are charging with for other licenses.
So can you explain to me, maybe give me a little bit of a precedential perspective with what other cities do? So we haven't touched it since 2004. So is it reasonable to assume that since 2004, most other cities have incrementally upped it over the years, and that's why they're at there? So this is effectively a catch-up, because I think for those listening at home or in the audience are just going to look at it and see a huge increase. Just a little more commentary on that might be helpful.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, it is common. So as I said, city staff evaluates this ordinance every single year. Typically, you do see every category updated every year, or at least every 5 years. We are significantly behind in that category, but again, the $500 is very standard for what we presently charge in all of our other categories for backgrounds. And then I will note, for example, on sale malt liquor license is currently $175. We're proposing $200. Some are we're talking $25 increases here, but it by no means catches us up to what other communities pay for or charge for their various business licenses. It will take several years in order to get to that. If we wanted to get to that, again, this is to cover costs. These do not cover costs as of now, but to help businesses where we would like to, I'm recommending that we phase that in.
Okay.
And these are licenses that we go through every single year.
Well, this is our first reading, so I think we're going to discuss this at the second reading and when we actually approve it. But if there are any glaring issues that people have, it probably is better to discuss it a little bit now, so that if we need to make some changes, city staff can bring back something that is maybe a little more palatable, if that's the route we want to go by the time we get to a second reading. So anyone on the council have any thought on this? Or do we want to, Councilmember Edberg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to comment on the last set of comments that Ms. Crawford just made about what is the proper basis for comparison in setting fees. And I'm not going to object to what we have in front of us. I want to signal, though, that particularly with regard to the rental cost at Pioneer Manor, we are at a point, we're approaching a point where our bonds will be paid off. The economics of maintaining and operating that housing are about to change. Now, I'm not assuming that just because the bonds are paid off that there are no more expenses, okay? I'm not making that assumption. But I do want to note that setting rental prices for city-owned housing and basing it on what the market price is, I'm not sure that that's the right yardstick to make. And so I want to put a marker down now for a robust conversation a year, maybe 2 years down the road when we are approaching what are those needs? What do we need to refinance? How do we pay for them over time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just putting a marker down now for when we have that, but it ties directly into what our philosophy is on how we set pricing and so forth. I don't have, okay. I only kind of sort of remember what the prices of malt liquor were back in 2004 and how many cases you had to sell in order to pay your city fee, and compared to what they are 20 years later. That one doesn't really bother me a whole lot, but that's just a personal anecdote.
Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, thank you. I should have also discussed Pioneer Manor. The reason that we are looking at that rate increase of 3% for Pioneer Manor for next year is we're very excited that the bond will be paid off. That will certainly help us to keep rents low. That isn't looked at as by market. That is looked at by the building needs. And we're looking at an elevator, several areas of carpet replacement, and other maintenance items. So that is what that is driven on.
Any other comments from council on this? All right, we've had our first reading. We'll take it up again at the second reading. Item 7, unfinished business. We have nothing scheduled. Item 8A, Level Up Academy Performance Agreement. Who's taking this?
Mr. Mayor, that would be me. Mayor, members of the council, the item before you tonight is a performance agreement with Level Up Academy. The recommendation from staff here is to adopt the resolution that's included in your packet, which would allow the city manager to negotiate a final agreement and enter into that agreement with Level Up Academy to secure completion of their site improvements and allow issuance of a final certificate of occupancy. Really, the spirit and intent behind this is the applicant was through the development review and land use approval process and was issued approval of those in the fall of 21. They then, in the early part of 22, got a building permit, began their project, and it is all but completed. They, for internal reasons, are in need of a final certificate of occupancy, and up to this point, because of just a few minor outstanding items, the city has issued a temporary certificate of occupancy, and that no longer fits their internal needs. So city staff consulted with Level Up Academy and their needs, and the city attorney was able to come up with this agreement that just basically puts down on paper the city's expectation to finalize the project and giving them what we feel is a reasonable 6-month extension to complete these improvements and still meet their needs of receiving a final certificate of occupancy. Staff has worked with the city attorney to draft a document that's been provided to representatives of Level Up, and they are reviewing that. But the goal here would be to have them sign off on that agreement, execute it by basically the end of the month to meet their internal needs. The city attorney is here to answer any technical questions. We've drafted a document, and again, that's in the hands of Level Up to just offer any comments on at this point. And there are a few representatives of Level Up here if you should have any questions of them. And with that, we take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindahl. Council, any questions on this?
Move to approve.
Council, I have a motion. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Councilmember Edbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't have issues with the proposed resolution. I'll defer to you, Mayor, if you want, if there are other conversations you want to have that's germane to the motion. I have a related CUP conversation about level up. So if you prefer now or later, I'll let you choose.
Now's good. Go ahead.
It's relevant.
So I'm glad that Level Up is in our community. I'm glad that they offer an educational alternative. All good. I'm appreciative that rooftop screening is going to be installed. That's been noted to me by other residents that, hey, and it's coming, so that's good. The issue that I would raise and seek some comments perhaps from Mr. Lindahl is around traffic and parking and the adequacy. So I grew up literally across the street from this location. The lines on County Road E of parents seeking to either drop off or pick up children, particularly in the afternoon at 3:30, strikes me as being a challenge. And it's probably exacerbated by how much parking space has been constructed, how much is there, whether there's any plans for anything else. Can you comment on traffic management, particularly at busy times of the school day, and its impact on overall safety and design?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Edberg, thanks for that question. Having had a chance to just do a little bit of research on this before we came into the meeting, and talking with staff that was part of that review process at the time, the record and the best recollection of staff was there were a few comments during the land use review process related to traffic concerns, but they didn't bear a significant change in design or that kind of thing at the time. Since their project has been ongoing, we have received one comment from one resident in the neighborhood that notes the same concerns that you have. And that concern came basically in the springtime of last year in that time frame. Close to the end of school. And so school school stopped during the summer. And then in this new year, we haven't received any additional complaints or feedback about traffic in the neighborhood. But certainly you raise a question that we certainly can now monitor more closely and get some, real-time experience and data on, and see if there's an issue that needs to be addressed.
I'd welcome that, and I don't necessarily have a solution. It is sporadic, it's relatively short during the day, but the lines can go quite long up County Road E. And that's the ones that I would be most concerned. I'm less concerned about, once they've made the turn and can clear onto Rolling View Drive, and mostly it's an ingress as opposed to an egress. There seems to be a traffic pattern that takes them out around the pond and elsewhere, so we don't necessarily have them backing up on Rolling View coming onto E. But that whole process of cars stacking up troubles, I won't say it's dangerous necessarily, but it troubles me, and it's just a highly dense area. So whatever you can do to monitor and assess, that would be welcome.
Yeah, certainly staff in coordination with the engineering department and the county, as a county road, we can look at those things and try to coordinate and take a look at it more closely.
Cool. Thank you.
Discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of approving the resolution granting the performance agreement with Level Up Academy, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The resolution is approved. Item 8B, updating the polling places for the 2024 presidential primary. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, since 2017, all municipalities must designate their polling place locations for an upcoming election year by December 31 of the previous year. So at the August 8th regular council meeting, the city council approved polling places for the March 5, 2024 presidential primary election. With the anticipated construction of Sunrise Park Middle School and their unavailability to be a polling place for Ward 3 for the 24 August primary and 24 November presidential election, Ramsey County, who administers our elections for us, worked with city staff to identify a new polling place for Ward 3. Parkview United Church of Christ was identified as the new polling place for Ward 3 at that time. Separately, St. Stephen Lutheran Church, a previous polling location for Ward 5, reoffered their building as a polling place for the 2024 elections. To create consistency for voters during all of the 2024 elections, Ramsey County and city staff concluded it would be in our best interest to amend the 2024 March presidential primary polling place to designate Parkview United Church of Christ and St. Stephen Lutheran Church as the polling places for Ward 3 and 5. So to create less confusion for all three of the elections for Ward 3 and Ward 5 next year. So this scenario keeps polling places the same, as I just said, for all 24 elections. Recent changes to polling places have been due to the new March presidential primary, school building construction, and accommodation of when school students are in class. So you'll see in the resolution updated polling places for the 2024 presidential primary scheduled for Tuesday, March 5th. For the 2024 August primary election and November presidential election, it is the intent of city staff to maintain those same polling places. Again, as I just said, formal action on that designation will take place after the March 24 presidential primary. So, and we do have a, kind of an informal communications plan to get this out to our residents, which includes updating our various websites, so city website, county, and then find your polling place. Hopefully the newspaper can run something as they usually do. We've already put this in our newsletter. We'll do that again. Again, and social media, and then the county will send postcards to voters as well. So. With that, I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Council, any comments or questions on this? Councilmember Walsh.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm the one that asked to remove this from the consent agenda. And really, just as a way to further communicate, this is a touchy thing, and it makes me nervous when we change polling locations because people get set on where to vote, and then they are disappointed when they go there and it's not where you vote, and confusion ensues, and maybe they don't vote, which is not what we want to have happen. So I like the communications plan that the manager laid out. And so I just thought one more touch would be to talk about it here in this meeting, and I also like the idea that it's in 2024, if you live in Ward 3 or live in Ward 5 or any of the wards, you're going to vote in the same place, all three chances you have to vote, this March primary and the primary and then general. So once we get that down, we're going to stick to it. So that's why I wanted to do it. So thank you for doing that.
Very good, Council. Any other? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm looking at Ward 4, and the primaries both are going to be are not going to be at Orchard Lane. Is the general election going to be in Orchard for Ward 4, where it has always been?
Do you want to speak?
Mayor and members of the council, so with the construction of the school district and with school being in session in March, I'm sorry, let me back up. We have had some churches step up and offer their location as polling places, and we believe, and this is Ramsey County election staff and the city working together, that they would be able to provide a more consistent polling place location for some of these. So when there's changes with the school year calendar, construction, that it would cause less confusion. The Area Learning Center, I don't believe, could have They could not have been a polling location in March, so then we would have had to change them again in August and November. So the purpose of this is to Redeemer Lutheran Church has stepped up to say that they can be a polling place for all 3 elections. So to not cause confusion, we opted to have all 3 of those elections at Redeemer Lutheran Church, then to have it first at Redeemer and then change to the ALC.
And so is that likely to reverse itself once the school district's construction project? I mean, we've been voting, Ward 4 has been voting at Orchard Lane for a long, long time, decades. Is that being changed now on a permanent basis or just to reflect the temporary nature of construction?
The intention would be to the proposed locations for 2024. We intend to keep it going that way as to not switch back and forth. Ramsey County election staff have worked diligently communicating with these sites to ensure that they can provide a polling place consistently for city elections, because they too don't want to have to switch back and forth.
This is another part of the communications plan that would be a whole lot of news to folks in the 4th Ward.
Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, so postcards will go out to all residents as they usually do. We will continue to do all of that, all the notifications that we always do for every single election, as well as this was already in one of our newsletters. So we will continue to do that. And as I shared, the city must designate polling locations every single year. So if voters find it, unsatisfying, we can certainly work with Ramsey County to find other solutions as well.
Councilmember Jones.
I'm going to throw my 2 cents in. I can see Mr. Edberg's concern. Ward 3 is moving right along with you. But I'd like to see it more permanent. I'd like to see it taken out of Sunrise. I don't think you'll ever hear anybody from the school district level complain about polling location being at Sunrise, but the teachers do. They don't like it. They feel that it is unsafe, not because of people going in to vote. The school is more open to strangers coming into that building that are not identified. And I know there was a lot of concern over the last that I've had talks, and Sunrise has done their best to limit that connectivity to the rest of the building, but that shuts down their building. That shuts down a big chunk of it. And if you've got a church that is willing to step up and do that, now, again, vetted by the county, can they do it every year? I would support seeing a location change out of at least Sunrise. I don't know how the other schools feel that are, I don't know how the ELS school feels, but I would support moving that. I think it's a good trial for at least Ward 3. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments on this? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second?
Motion is second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The resolution is passed. Item 9, discussion. We have nothing scheduled. Item 10, communication from the city manager. Ms. Crawford, anything tonight?
Yes, just a couple of slides. I have a couple of events and meetings to share with you, maybe. I don't have them memorized.
Do we need one of the high school kids to come up? The high school kids can come up and help us, I'm sure. They're so much better at, they're so much better at technology than we are. Tell us your password. What's your password? Go Bears, exclamation point. That's right. White Bear Way.
That's okay. Well, maybe I can find them on my phone here. Shoot. So tomorrow evening is the Downtown Mobility and Parking Study Steering Committee meeting here at City Hall at 6:30 PM. Thursday, we have a ribbon cutting for Good Things Cafe. They recently moved into the previous grandma's site, so that is at 3:30 PM on Thursday. And I'm going to keep going with what I know for right now. So zoning code update meeting. So now we're talking about city meetings. Zoning code update meeting is December 5th at 6:30 PM at Boatworks Commons. That is a community advisory committee meeting. The mayor and several city council members will receive a tour of the water treatment plant Wednesday, December 6th at 6 PM. We will have our truth and taxation hearing and our 2024 budget presentation Tuesday, December 12th at 7 PM right here at City Hall. And then, as I said, ribbon cutting for Good Things this Thursday. The Greater White Bear Lake Community Foundation's Share the Joy event is Thursday, November 30th at 5 PM. The Chamber's Roaring 100th Gala celebration is Thursday, December 7th at 5:30 PM. RSVP is required for that. I think Councilmember Engstrand is going to come with staff, so thank you. And then Winterfest is downtown on Saturday, December 9th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's what I have. Councilmember Jones, has something?
No, I'm not ready. I'd like to add something after that.
Oh, I was just going to comment, I don't know why you couldn't memorize all that.
I know.
No, Councilmember
Just
Jones.
trying.
So off topic a little bit, but because of our truth and taxation, our next meeting, my last meeting.
Yeah.
The city staff put together a really great video, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. And hopefully people are seeing it, hopefully it's out there. But a little corny,
Yeah.
no Academy Awards going out to any acting,
Oh,
but
man.
it's, outside of that, it's a really good video, and I think it really does state very well what, kind of the whole process in 2 minutes, so that's not easy to do. So good job.
Thank
staff.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And where can folks find that, Ms. Crawford? Is that on YouTube? What?
Folks can find that on YouTube, on the city's Facebook page, and on the city's website. And of course, if people have questions about the budget or taxes or how to maybe interpret their property valuation notice, we're happy to help anyone who wants to come in and talk with Finance Department or myself.
Very good, thank you. Any questions or comments from Ms. Crawford? All right, so very briefly, before we adjourn to the high school students that are out there, you guys won the city council meeting lottery tonight, because the group that was here last meeting stayed here until 9:50, and we're just about done, so good job picking this meeting. I'll give you guys the same spiel. 20 years ago, I sat right where you are when I was in Mr. Malum's class. I know other teachers have extended this project to their classes as well. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope you learned a little bit about local government. It is very important to your everyday lives. It's all the little behind-the-scene things like the water and sewer and streets that are often thankless jobs, but it's incredibly important. So I hope you use this as a catalyst to stay involved in local government as you get older, and maybe one day you'll be sitting up here if you so choose. So thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
You need signature,